that you guys have it if you need it. So we've got our palette again with our 3 primary colors in white, and I'm just making them for you guys like this. If they're clean at the end of class, you can put them back up there. We can reuse them. So the very first one is called dry brush, and usually you'll want to use a square brush for this one, and you just want a little bit of paint because your goal here is to kind of get a real scratchy feel. So I'm just putting a teeny bit of paint on my brush and painting dry like that. And you can try that with, layering colors, but this can be kind of a technique that's used for like a woody texture on a tree or the side of a house. If I wanted to, blend 2 colors like that, I could, but it makes kind of a nice nature-y texture for like the side of trees, like birch trees. If you wanted to use a brown to do that, that gives you a really nice kind of natural feel, and you can layer that on top of a base layer that you already have. So dry brush is a really good one for that. An outline is good to practice, so you can use a round brush to make a shape. We'll just say a circle, and then I'm going to come back and practice outlining this after that dries. It usually only takes about 2 or 3 minutes for acrylic paint to dry. So I'm just going to leave that shape, and you can do a couple shapes. Sometimes it's good to try like a square and a circle, and you can also practice painting, layering and painting on top as well. So I'm just going to start with a couple of shapes there and let those dry. Remember, we're washing our brushes. We don't really want to leave those upside down in our water because that can bend the bristles, and as you guys know, that can be frustrating. Also, make sure you have something to wipe your brushes on. So stippling is our next one, and that is where we're going to take 2 probably primary colors, and you're going to start by making dots with 1 primary color. And we should probably try this in like 2 different sets of primaries. So I'm going to do 2 groups of yellow dots and then try mixing my other primaries with them. And by mixing, I don't mean like physically mixing them on the paper. I'm just going to interdisperse the second color with the first one. So I'm going to wash my brush, get a second primary color, which will be blue for the top part. And I'm going to put blue dots in between my yellow dots. And it's going to give almost a green impression from a long ways away. So like those paintings we looked at by Georges Seurat, the stippling is he makes his whole paintings just with dots. So there's my blue and yellow, and then on the bottom I'll go ahead and do red and yellow so that I have all 3 of my primary colors in here, and that should kind of make from a distance an orangey color. And this can be a really good technique for, like, you would probably think of a garden, or if you wanted to do a whole picture like this. It's just another creative way of blending. So there I've got a couple stippling, a 2-color blend. So yesterday we did a gradient, right, where we started with blue and white and we worked down until it got lighter. This time we're going to pick 2 colors and we're going to blend them together. And this one, it is important to work really fast. Usually a flat brush is going to work better for this. So I'm going to put down my first color, and then I'm going to clean off my brush really quick, get my second color, and I'm going to have them meet kind of in the middle. And then I'm going to add a little bit of that first color. So I'm going to kind of practice making a gradient with 2 colors. Again, wiping off some of that color so that as I come down here, there's less and less of the red in the yellow. And we want to make that as smooth of a transition, so we don't want it to look stripey. We want to just work it from the red into an orange and into the yellow. So just experiment with that. It's a great way to make a background on a painting too, is a two-color blend. Masking, you're going to need a piece of masking tape. Imagine that. So you can make these into whatever shape you want. You can do a letter for your name. And masking is just another technique of leaving an area on your canvas white, so that I like to rip these pieces in half on the vertical axis just to get smaller pieces, especially when I'm working smaller. So maybe I'll do the first letter in my name here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and practice mixing a couple colors here to make a violet. I'm going to mix some red and blue. I'm going to paint over top of my letter, and then when that dries, I'm going to come back and peel that off and see how it looks. And then for my detail painting, I want to use a small, so I'm just going to use the brush that was in my watercolor kit, and I want to try some dots, some lines. Maybe a tree is a good thing to practice. And while we're down here, how would I make brown if I have this color palette? You could mix it all, and that's what a lot of students say. It is important though that you're mixing two complements. So if I just mix them all, it's going to be hard to know if I'm mixing two complements because I might not have the right amount of each primary. So I'm going to make sure that I make green first before I go try to make brown. So I'm going to add just a teeny bit of blue to my yellow here. And I might just make that a final assignment on this sketchbook assignment, is to mix a brown. So I'm going to, without mixing everything on your palette into one thing, just a little bit of it. So I'm going to make a green here. That was just a little bit of blue and quite a bit of yellow. And then I'm going to add the complement to this. And what is the complement of green? Red. So I'm going to add red and a little bit of white to this green. And I'm going to start to get a brownie color. And it's looking pretty yellow, so I'm going to need a little bit more red still. And as I keep mixing that, then I'm going to have a color that I could make a tree with. So now I haven't ruined my whole palette, but I've got a little bit of a brown here. So if I wanted to make a tree, I'm going to practice using like a really light, I'm going to challenge myself to see how detailed I can get. And right now I've got quite a bit of brush on my paint on my brush, so I'm going to work on getting a little bit of that paint off, because if my brush is loaded too much, it's going to be harder to get detail. Now remember, pressure on our brush is kind of what controls how thin we can get a line. Also, if you want your line to get thinner, you can dilute your paint just a teeny bit with water, and that will help you get an even finer line. And remember, these are techniques that you're going to do on top of, let's say, a wash or something else. So in detail painting, you could practice making a tree. You could practice just doing little dashes, different textures. This could even be leaves falling off of my tree. So there's kind of a detail painting. So just kind of have fun experimenting with that. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to outline in a contrasting color these. So here you're going to be experimenting with, again, a detailed line. And you're just going to be practicing brush control. I balance my brush with my pinky on my paper to steady my hand. And then practicing the curve On a circle, again, I usually have to kind of stop and change direction at some point. You'll notice I move where I'm starting and stopping from, and that makes a nice outline around my shape. And if I get off track a little bit, I'm just going to go back and outline that. And now I can also go and peel off my masking tape as well. If I can remember my password. Okay, and so I can come down here, and this should be dry, so I can peel off my masking tape, and there I have my mask of my letter. So those are your assignments for today. Dry brush, outline, stippling, 2-color blend, masking, and detail painting. So I'll